Okay, here is some more stuff from my what I call my media collection, which includes books, videotapes, DVDs, anything like that. Here you have there's the books from G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. These are from Action Man. They came in both softback and hardback. Here are some Action Man small books: Suicide Saboteurs, Action Man versus the Master Spy, Race for the Moon. They had several little books like that. They had these skinny ones as well, different series. Mission Sabotage, Action Man, The Flying Saucer, Desert Duel. And then Action Force had their own series of books. Return of the Dinosaurs, Tomb of the Gods, Action Force Goes West, etc. And here you have, this one is another one from Japan. Again, I wish I could read it, but I can't. It's combination, like there's Storm Shadow dossiers and stories. Okay, I think I just saw the vamp there. There's Torch, Stinger, and again, I wish one day that someone who spoke Japanese could let me know exactly what how they put this together. The Fact and Yearbook, which is a really handy little book that Hasbro actually put out. And then of course you got all the tapes. And some of the ones, especially from Europe, are really exciting. To hear G.I. Joe, the songs that were made for G.I. Joe in French are completely different. Even the tunes are different than what we have here in the for the U.S. versions. Here's a little Action Force mini notebook. I think that's cute. And then some of the books actually came with tapes as well. Here's Flint's Holiday, which is one of the ones we saw here. Here's Flint's Holiday. So here's the tape that goes with it. Here's one of the French ones I was telling you about, G.I. Joe, quatre chansons, 4 songs. And some of the songs are just awesome. I would used to just put them in my car and listen to them. G.I. Joe records. Oh man, we can't forget those. This is also from France, but I got it because it has the G.I. Joe song on it. This is another one from France also with the G.I. Joe song. Okay, there were a lot of G.I. Joe songs on the French children's albums. These are from Action Team, which is similar to Adventure Team or Action Man in Britain, and they in the 1970s, rather than just have anonymous figures that were all called G.I. Joe or all called Action Man, they actually gave personalities to some of their figures and gave them names and actual stories that went along. So this is one of them. He's Bob Power, and Bob Power was sort of like the commander figure. And then here's G.I. Joe, The Battle of the Bulge. This is G.I. Joe Songs of World War II, which doesn't really have anything to do with the toy line. And this is a guy named Joe. This is, again, just part of my history research to try to find out when they started using the word Joe to refer to soldiers. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Yeah, that's 4 action adventures. Castle of Doomed. Another French hit parade. Here's another Castle of Doomed. And this is one that hasn't been opened. And here is Arise, Serpentor, Arise. There's another G.I. Joe one from Germany. And then here is The Adventures of G.I. Joe, The Secret of Mummy's Tomb. These are 12-inch stories. Here are a bunch of G.I. Joe VHS and DVDs. This one here, for instance, these two here are both from Brazil, Comandos Emassao. This one here is also from Brazil. It was later, it was under G.I. Joe, but it was dubbed into Portuguese. These are in Spanish. These were released mostly in Mexico. You can see Action Force. These are from the UK. These right here are from Poland. There's just some from a little bit of everywhere. Whenever I was lucky enough to find some, I would pick them up. PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, I guess they're different. Xbox, Wii, etc. So I try to pick up the newer ones and the older ones. Here's a one. I think this one was from Cobra Strike. This is Atari. The Action Force Atari. This one is the Commodore 64. I thought that was Commodore 64. It took me a long time to find this one in a nice box. Nintendo, etc. So I try to also pick up the games. Not that I play them, These right here, you'll recognize them as the G.I. Joe cartoon series. They were released in, these are on VHS big box. These are the beta big box. They were also released in the same sequence in smaller box version. They were also released in a gray box version. The gray box version was sold like in boxes like that. There's so many G.I. Joe DVDs available now that luckily anybody who wants to watch these cartoons can watch them. That's one of the wonderful things about some of the new technologies that have come out and what they've done with the DVDs, because it used to be that watching some of these cartoons really took some ingenuity. There were a lot of people who bootlegged them, and I must admit I was one of the people who used to buy the bootleg DVDs. Sometimes just because I mean I don't actually think I watched these, but I was really fascinated by the artwork that and the intricate work that a lot of the people put into making them. G.I. Joe, as you can see if you pan here a little bit, is right now my collecting focus. I've been doing this for a lot of years now, too many years, I hate to admit. I was hoping this would be done many years ago, but it turned out that I was very naive and did not realize how many Joe items existed. And I'm not talking everything, I'm just talking figures and vehicles, because that's the focus of what I do. I'm trying to gather together as many figures and vehicles from the U.S. and all around the world to archive them, take pictures of them, and hopefully get them published, and so that other people can enjoy it, and I can share the information that I've gained. In order to do that, and to do it the way that I wanted to do it, it required actually gathering the items themselves, so that I could one, verify what sort of things came with what item, if there were any color variations, if there were whatever, not only the variations in the vehicle itself, but even possibly the blueprints or the driver that came with it. So I've spent quite a bit of time trying to gather these and get them together and compare. The way that I work, the way I try to put my book together is first gather information, second try to gather the item itself, 3 try to take photographs of it that show good detail, pictures of the, I'm going to talk mainly about vehicles because that's the book that I'm working on right now, the vehicles and the vehicle parts. And then once I have the pictures, I try to put them together, and I'll give you just some examples of what I'm doing. I assign them each a number. This is SV, stands for sub-vehicle, because the Locust is a sub-vehicle of the General. And so these are all pieces to the Locust, so they start off with the SV for sub-vehicle. And then these do not have an SV because these are the numbers of the actual General, pieces that go to the actual General itself. So here you have the battery case, and you have the wheels, and you have these parts. Just and back to there. And then a list that goes with those numbers, so that for each number there's a corresponding name to each part, so that the way that I got the name for the part generally was either from the blueprints or from the box itself. Most boxes will list the table, the contents within it, and so they'll list each piece, and so they give it a name. Doesn't always correspond one-to-one with the name that it's given in the blueprints, so sometimes I have to make a choice as to which name to give it. But in general, that's what I'm doing. When I first started this journey to write this book, my intent, my hope, was to be able to gather it all within one collection. 2 reasons for that. Well, maybe more than 2 reasons, but the main reason was so that I could verify for myself what the variations and what the source material really was, and also in that same one to to be able to answer any questions. If my book were published and somebody had a question about a specific item, a specific vehicle, they could actually email me and I would have it in hand and be able to answer questions. If I didn't have it in hand, it would be a lot more difficult. The second main reason was I was hoping, and again this is really naive, but I was hoping that that it would be something sort of inspirational, that yes, it could be done. A person could gather together G.I. Joe vehicles from across the world from 1982 to current, well actually no, to 2029. That's as far as I'm going. I'm doing 3 decades, all of the 80s, all of the 90s, and all of the aughts. But at the time when I first started out, I had no idea of the quantity of items there were. So that's gone bye-bye. But because I started, I figured I would try to finish anyway, as close to it as I could get. I now know that will always be a pipe dream. I never really will be able to complete it, but that's okay. I've made my peace with that, and actually I kind of enjoy the idea. It took a lot of pressure off me once I finally once I finally realized that I just couldn't do it. One person can't do it. That's one of the nice things about the G.I. Joe community itself. Because there are so many people all around the world that are collecting, to be able to share, to help, to exchange information, it really has made putting this book together an absolute delight. Here we have a Nilco vamp. Nilco was a company that released G.I. Joe vehicles in Egypt, the vehicles and figures. The toys themselves were made by Fun School in India, but were released in Egypt through this company that distributed them. They're quite scarce. I felt very lucky to find this vamp. I only got it recently. I bought it sealed, and I opened it up because I was very curious as to what variation vamp it might be. Vamp variations, I mean all vehicle variations are exciting to me, but vamp variations are sort of a specialty. I love them. I don't know why, it's just, I guess because there are so many of them, it's a lot of fun. When you first look at it, you notice a difference, quite a bit of difference from the US version. The color green is different, the color gray here is different, and definitely the accessories or the pieces that go to it are also a completely different shade. Here is a Fun School vamp. It's not in very good condition. It's in fact I got this directly from a person who was in their personal collection in India. I mean, they played with it as a child, and as you can see, they put decals on it that don't actually belong to it. But it is the same coloring, the same gray as the Nilco one, and the pieces that well, let me go ahead and open this so we can see the pieces themselves. That's the US green. This is the one of the early Fun School greens, and this is a later Fun School green. The reason why I got both of these out is because also there's also a variation here, and that this actually they should go this way. This one and this one and this one. They put, for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, they added rivets to the vamp vehicle later on in the release. And one of the reasons you can tell this one is a later version than this is because early Fun School vehicles, for the most part, had the more transparent decals. You could sort of see through parts of them. Here we go, like this kind of decal sheet. Whereas the later ones had a paper opaque decals. Okay, so to put this together and to finally have, I'm going to call this my Fun School / Nilco vamp because this coloring was released in both countries. And so the steering wheel is on. There you go. And voila, we have a vamp. And oh, interestingly, this is gray here and black here. I hadn't noticed that. Wow. So rather than be the same color, they're two different colors. And here we have Fun School vamps 2 and 3, although I probably shouldn't give them a number. And then here's the US one for comparison.